Incredible twist. Waitress discovers hidden kindness after losing job for returning wallet. Sarah wiped down the counter, her smile firmly in place as the afternoon sun poured through the diner's window. It was another ordinary day in Maplewood, yet every hour felt like an eternity. Just a little longer, she told herself. Each coffee served a small victory against the tides of debt and worry. But then she caught sight of the wallet, a bulging leather rectangle forgotten on the counter. A single heartbeat of hesitation raced through her. Could this be a sign? But the thought was quickly suffocated by her sense of duty. She couldn't turn her back on someone's misfortune. As she approached the frazzled customer, his expression shifted from confusion to gratitude. "Thank you so much," he exclaimed, opening the wallet to reveal a hefty stack of cash. "You're a lifesaver." Her heart swelled with pride, momentarily eclipsing the persistent whir of anxiety within her. Yet, as she turned back toward the kitchen, her manager's sharp voice sliced through the celebratory moment. "You're too nice for your own good, Sarah. Look at that. You lost out on an easy tip." His condescending tone hung over her like a storm cloud, and the weight of it settled into her gut. The laughter of the regulars faded, replaced by the pulse of indignation. She wanted to defend herself, to scream that she had done the right thing. But the confrontation escalated. "Do you think honesty pays our bills?" he snapped, his eyes narrowing. They were words that dug deep, challenging her integrity as if it were a frivolous idea. The diner, her refuge, twisted into a battlefield. Anger rose, hot and rebellious, as she stood there, fists clenched, trying to make sense of the injustice. Was goodness really undervalued? Just then, the tension broke her silence, and just like that, her job was gone, unceremoniously dismissed. The drive home was a blur of uncertainty and shame. Bills were piling up, her mother's care was a constant worry, and her daughter was counting on her. The stakes had never been higher, yet here she was, left empty-handed. Days later, a bizarre twist of fate had her crossing paths with the wallet's owner, Greg, a businessman whose crisp suit highlighted the gap between them. Tension thickened the air as they met, his deep voice a stark reminder of the life Sarah could never afford. Yet, as he expressed gratitude, something unexpected stirred within her, a flicker of kinship reflected in his open demeanor. "Why did you return it?" he asked, surprised. Her response came from a hollow space. "Because it's the right thing to do." Greg nodded, and for the first time she saw him not just as a symbol of the class divide, but as a man who recognized the value of integrity. He offered her mentorship, a way to share her voice while helping others. The possibilities wrapped around her like a warm blanket, feeding the hunger to make a difference.
Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. But as she delved deeper into community initiatives, each step forward felt fraught with tension. She often returned to the diner, staring at the door as if she could feel the manager's scorn weighing on her. Would confronting him about her dismissal lead to retaliation? Or worse, would the town, loyal to him, disregard her efforts? Doubt gnawed at her, casting shadows where glimmers of hope flickered. A central meeting loomed. She'd stand before her community and echo the truth of her struggles. Heart racing, she contemplated whether they'd support her cries for justice or remain silent, afraid to disrupt the status quo. The microphone trembled beneath her touch. Would they rise against the injustices she faced, or cast her aside, as she feared? Sarah stood at the front of the modest conference room, her heart pounding against her ribs like a wild animal desperate to escape. The polite faces of her former customers were unfamiliar in this new light, their smiles now banners of expectation. She had come to speak her truth, yet a heavy weight pulled at her resolve. Would they see her not just as a waitress, but as a woman molded by hard choices? Anxiety threatened to claw its way up her throat, but the memory of Greg's encouragement whispered through her mind. People respond to authenticity. Taking a deep breath, she stepped fully into the crucible of confrontation, forcing herself to remember the kindness she had shown. "Thank you all for being here," she began, the tremor in her voice scarcely masked by her facade. "I want to talk about honesty and integrity, values that seem increasingly undervalued." She winced inwardly as the words tumbled out, but there was no turning back now. Chairs creaked as the audience shifted, attention sharpening. With each word she spoke about her experience, a strange comfort began to replace her fear. She shared the story of the wallet, the confrontation with her former manager, and the harsh reality of being dismissed for choosing right over easy. She saw small nods from a few who had sat at her counter, their reactions whispering personal connections. A flicker of acceptance warmed her. Yet with every revelation came a newfound vulnerability. What if they turned against her? What if she became the subject of gossip, a cautionary tale about what happens when moral choices meet the cold currency of survival?
Her breath caught as she pushed forward, revealing the threats to her financial stability. I am not just a waitress. I'm a mother and a daughter. I'm fighting for my future and for others like me, she said, her voice gaining strength as it surged. I chose to return that wallet because I believe in community, and I believe in people. The air in the room shifted, a delicate tension replacing the initial skepticism. Faces softened, questions sparkled in their eyes. For the first time, she felt the urge to connect rather than defend. It had been too long since she had spoken her truth. "Sarah," a voice broke through from the back. It was Mrs. Perkins, a long-time diner patron. "We all remember your kindness. It was one of the reasons we kept coming back." The room was still, the impact of her words hanging heavy. And then the unexpected happened. Another voice chimed in, a regular who had only ever exchanged pleasantries before now. "And you deserve better than what he gave you. It's about time someone stood up to that kind of behavior." Sarah felt her heart swell, a surge of adrenaline almost overwhelming her. This wasn't just about her anymore. There was a movement brewing, and energy that surged through the audience like a powerful wave crashing against the shore. But then, the schism re-emerged. Visions of her past collided with the hope of change. As she closed her address, the audience erupted in a mixture of applause and murmurs, perhaps even whispers of support. And while relief washed over her, a gnawing question echoed in her mind. What next? Could this small triumph translate into real change, or would it merely fizzle out? The thoughts settled heavily in her chest, intertwining with her determination. She had raised the black flag of awareness, but now she had to navigate the tumultuous waters of opportunity and conflict. As the applause faded, she locked eyes with Greg, who nodded knowingly from across the room. It sparked something deeper within her, a call to action, not just for herself, but for others who felt silenced. Then, amidst the chaos of her swirling thoughts, the realization washed over her. If she was to fight for fairness and dignity, she would need to step further into this role of leadership that was being thrust upon her. The time had come to face those who embodied disregard for decency head-on, and she would be the one to ignite that confrontation. That was it. Her next step was clear, but it came with a heavy cost. She could already feel the impending storm brewing, and as she turned to leave, the crackling energy in the room mingled with an undeniable sense of purpose. Not only was fighting for herself now on the table, but it meant facing the very source of her dilemmas. What had she unleashed? The answers awaited, and the uncharted waters loomed ahead. As Sarah stepped out of the conference room, the applause still ringing in her ears, a part of her was dizzy from the unexpected acceptance she had received. But the other part, the wary part, clung to the shadows of doubt that threatened to engulf her newfound resolve. She had stirred something in that room, but what was it? The looming fear of backlash clouded her mind, and as she walked down the hall, the textured carpet felt startlingly real beneath her feet, grounding her in a reality that hadn't yet settled. Determined to confront her fears rather than flee from them, Sarah took out her phone and called Greg. Her hands shook slightly as she hit the dial button. When he answered, his easy tone reassured her momentarily. "Hey, you did amazing back there. What's the next step?" he asked, his excitement brightening her mood. "I'm not sure, Greg. I mean, they applauded, but what if it wasn't enough? What if it just becomes a token gesture?" Her voice cracked with uncertainty, revealing layers of apprehension she thought she had buried. "Small victories add up, Sarah. Don't sell yourself short. It's about building momentum now. You're not done yet. You need to capitalize on this." His words kicked her mental gears into motion. Capitalize. She needed to understand what that meant in practical terms. When she hung up, she made a list of what she could do next. The words blurred momentarily before her. Awareness, action, advocacy. With each word, the vision for her future solidified. She needed to become a voice for those who felt voiceless. This was not about the financial stability of one waitress anymore. It had escalated into a battle for dignity across the entire restaurant landscape.
Freeing herself from the confines of self-doubt, she grabbed a record book from her old pull-out desk and began jotting down ideas. What if she held meetings, offered workshops on ethics in the workplace, created support groups for server rights? Ideas began to crystallize, turning her initial fear into a palpable forward driving force. But as she brainstormed, her thoughts pivoted toward her former manager, the very reason she found herself here, Jared. He was a thorn in her side, an embodiment of everything she could not stand. Looming in the back of her mind, she knew confronting him would be inevitable. She had to prepare herself mentally for the clash that awaited. One evening, she mustered enough courage to drive back to the diner. The familiar neon lights flickered and buzzed as she pulled into the parking lot. She felt a strange concoction of nostalgia and dread wash over her. There he stood, leaning against the entrance, nonchalantly flipping through his phone as if nothing had changed. He didn't know about her speech, the gathering of support, the burgeoning wave of empathy that had begun to coalesce around her. Simply confronting him wouldn't be enough. She needed strategy. What arguments would she present? Was there a way to expose the culture of fear he cultivated and enhance her argument? Rage bubbled just beneath her skin, fueling her determination.
Returning home that evening, her mind swirled with thoughts of how she would gather people to support her while dealing with Jared's inevitable retaliation. She envisioned herself standing tall, unyielding in front of her past. But could she maintain her composure when facing him? "Am I ready for this?" she thought, biting her lip, unsure if the answer was a resounding yes or a mix of both fear and courage. And while doubt still flickered within, the ember of resolve was strong enough to push her forward. With her plan starting to take shape, she just needed to connect those dots, forge the network, rally the troops, and regardless of the challenges ahead, find the strength to confront not just Jared, but the oppressive culture that had stifled so many. What would be the cost of this confrontation? That question loomed heavily as she wiped her tears. A resolve forming, she would not go quietly. The kind of change she sought was monumental, but perhaps, just perhaps, she was finally ready to wage that battle. Her phone buzzed on the table, breaking the silence. A message from Greg. "Ready for whatever comes next? We're in this together." In an instant, she typed back, "Yes, but this time I'm going in on my terms." The next chapter of her journey awaited, and it was time to face those shadows framing her future. Would she be able to stand her ground against the darkness without losing herself? The following days coiled around Sarah like a tightening vine, pulling her deeper into a whirlpool of thoughts and plans. Each morning began with her in front of the mirror, repeating mantras of courage that felt foreign yet necessary. Her reflection bore the weight of her aspirations and the scars of her past. Balancing the exhilaration of her newfound purpose against the impending confrontation with Jared churned her stomach into knots. As she walked into her favorite cafe to meet Greg 1 week after her presentation, she recalled the suffocating atmosphere of the diner that had stifled her spirit for so long. The rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, an ironic reminder of the energy she once poured into flipping orders and serving tables under Jared's domineering glare. She let the warm familiarity settle her a bit, allowing a moment of resolve to wash over her. "Hey," Greg smiled as she approached the corner table, his enthusiasm glowing bright against her lingering shreds of worry. "You look ready for battle." In this moment, she dared to reflect on what he said. Was she really ready? "I should be," she replied, forcing a smile, though deep inside she felt like a delicate frame holding back an earthquake of insecurity. They each ordered coffee, and as Greg spoke animated about potential strategies for amplifying her voice in the community, Sarah's thoughts drifted to the obstacles ahead. The mere thought of facing Jared shot adrenaline through her bloodstream.
Her fists clenched slightly under the table as memories of harsh words and unfair treatment flooded her mind. "I want to create genuine change," she stated, surprising herself with the steeliness in her voice. "But I can't shake the feeling that confrontation with him may come at a price higher than I'm ready to pay." "The price might be worth it if it means standing your ground," Greg replied, offering a pragmatic, steely gaze. "You'll need to expose the culture he's fostered. Think about what it did to you and how you've grown. You've got a compelling story. Use that." The conversation shifted to planning, each of her ideas morphing into actionable steps. They outlined meeting times for strategy sessions, drafting talking points, and identifying potential allies within the business. As the coffee cups emptied, a sense of urgency ignited within her. She couldn't lose sight of why she needed to confront Jared. It was not merely about her. It was about countless others like her, bound by fear, silenced by the pervasive structures that Jared upheld at the diner. This wasn't a battle she could afford to shy away from. When the meeting ended, Sarah walked home, thoughts swirling with purpose. She could melt into anxiety or rise to become a testament of resilience,
dismantling the shadows that had once taken such hold. Each step echoed her resolve to unearth her truth, even if it meant engaging in painful wrangling with her past. That night, she wrote a letter to Jared, not one filled with anger, but rather one that laid bare her journey, the impact of his management style, and a revelation of the resilience that blossomed in response to his tyranny. It was cathartic, the act of putting pen to page echoing a significant milestone of her evolution. When she sealed the envelope, something shifted. It felt like she could literally feel a weight lifting from her chest, an emotion that fought to replace the fear. Resolute, she decided she'd deliver the letter in person, a pivotal moment that could very well set the course for her new life. As she tucked the letter into her bag the following day, the phone buzzed again. A text from Greg read, "The time has come to face him, isn't it?" She paused, fingers lingering over the screen. Yes, she thought with a newfound intensity, it was time to face the fear. Would she hold her ground, or would her past consume her once more? The balance hung delicately, as delicate as the parchment containing her truth. The next chapter called. Change was within her reach, but at what cost? The sun spilled by the window as Sarah prepared for the day that could redefine her existence. She woke up with a heaviness in her chest, but steeled herself with the knowledge that clarity would be waiting at the diner. Each appearance in the old place re-triggered memories, but today was different. Today she wasn't a mere pawn in Jared's game, she was a player with purpose.
As she walked the familiar streets, the crisp morning air nipped at her senses, invigorating her determination. She had rehearsed her delivery countless times, fine-tuning her words until they felt as natural as her breath. Each step felt like an act of defiance against the suffocation she had endured. She gripped the letter tightly in her hand, her resolve solidifying. Arriving at the diner, the sight of it churned a whirlpool of conflicting emotions within her. Discontented laughter and the clatter of dishes provided a maddening backdrop to her mission. For a moment, the din of the diner threatened to swallow her purpose whole. Just inside the door, she hesitated, her breath becoming shallow. But reminding herself of the countless others who felt silenced fueled her urgency. When she spotted Jared across the room, his commanding presence darkened the cheerful atmosphere like a storm cloud. A knot formed in her stomach. She took a deep breath, summoning the courage she had cultivated. No turning back now. Clenching the letter, she approached him, each step deliberate, an embodiment of her newfound power. "Jared," she called out, her voice steady, despite the tremor of excitement and anxiety seeping through her. He turned, eyebrows raised, skepticism lacing his expression. "What do you want, Sarah? It's busy here." His dismissive tone bit into her composure, but instead of retreating, she pressed on, unwavering. "I have something to say," she replied, swallowing hard, her heart racing. "And it's about how the culture of this place, your culture, has impacted so many people, including me." His gaze hardened, as if bracing for a fight. "And you think your opinion matters? You were just a waitress." The barb stung, but she steeled herself. "I was more than just a waitress. I have a story, and it's one that deserves to be told. Your leadership has cost not just me, but many others their dignity and sense of purpose." For a fleeting moment, she saw something shift in his expression. Was it surprise? Maybe even a hint of discomfort. Before he could respond, she ripped open the envelope and handed him the letter. "Read it later. It talks about the impact of your management style and how I've grown beyond your reign of fear." The words struck like a lightning bolt. For a heartbeat, time seemed to freeze, the din of the diner fading into an ambient hum. She walked away, the weight of her past feeling lighter, a mixture of exhilaration and relief washing over her. The act of confronting him was liberating in a way she hadn't anticipated. Once outside, Sarah took a moment to breathe deeply, closing her eyes. It felt like a purge, a tearing away of the invisible chains that had confined her. This wasn't merely about her confrontation. It signified something larger, a reclamation of her voice. But with liberation came uncertainty. What would Jared's response be? Would he take her letter to heart, or would he dismiss it and continue his reign?
The fear of the latter loomed like a shadow, threatening to crush her newfound freedom. As she considered this, a realization struck her. No matter what Jared chose to do next, she had already transformed. The confrontation had awakened something dormant within her, a mighty echo of resilience. She sensed it growing, a drive that would propel her forward beyond the diner into uncharted territories of her life. The next stage of her journey began to unfurl in her mind, discussing her experience with others, amplifying her voice even further. She could write a blog, reach out to local women's groups, share her story in a way that resonated with those still trapped.
With balance teetering between liberation and fear, she stood on the cusp of unmistakable change, each decision a step into the unknown. Was this newfound mission the path to true empowerment, or just another detour on the road of confrontation? As she walked onward, anticipation tinged with uncertainty swirled in her heart. Secrets always hide in the shadows. Some still awaited illumination, and Sarah was ready to shine a light on them. Sarah walked down the street, her head swimming with possibilities. The air felt different, charged with the thrill of action and the weight of unknown consequences. The confrontation with Jared had shifted something fundamental within her. It was more than just speaking her truth. It was an awakening, a call to explore the depths of her potential. As she turned a corner, she spotted a quaint little bookstore. The sign outside read, "Local authors and their stories." A jolt of inspiration struck. Writing had always been an outlet for her, one she had pushed aside in the tumultuous years of servitude under Jared's oppressive management. She hesitated at the door, fear tugging at the back of her mind, but a surge of resolution washed over her, urging her to step inside. The musty scent of paper and ink filled her lungs, comforting and familiar. She wandered through the aisles, fingers grazing the book spines, each title a promise of wisdom and escape. Her heart raced at the thought of sharing her experiences, of possibly publishing her own story. But doubt lurked, whispering reminders of her past insignificance. What makes my story worthy of being told? Picking up a journal from a nearby shelf, Sarah flipped through the pages. They seemed to echo her thoughts, filled with dreams and aspirations, raw emotions spilling out like ink on paper. It resonated with her, the need to document her journey, to articulate her rebirth, not just for herself, but for those who felt voiceless. In that moment, clarity enveloped her. Committing her experiences to paper wasn't merely a path to validation. It was a potential lifeline for others drowning in similar darkness. She decided to start a blog, a space to weave narratives about her struggles and triumphs, shedding light on the unspoken realities of life in a toxic work environment.
Fired up, she left the bookstore, her feet carrying her purposefully home. As she sat down at her kitchen table, a wave of exhilaration washed over her. The blank screen beckoned, an invitation to self-discovery. But where to begin? She thought of Jared's dismissive words and the hurtful echoes of her past. The first sentence formed in her mind as she typed. Once, I was just a face behind the counter, but that's not the whole story. Each keystroke felt like a declaration of independence. With every paragraph, she dissected her emotions, dissecting moments of fear and anger, woven with resilience and hope. Hours melted away as she poured her soul into her writing. Time itself seemed to blur, consumed by the intensity of her mission. Yet, with each word came an undercurrent of anxiety. Would anyone care enough to read about her? Would they see her as more than just a former waitress, but as a woman who fought against the tides of silence? Another dilemma struck. In her quest for honesty, how much would she reveal? There was a thin line between catharsis and vulnerability. What if Jared retaliated? What if there were repercussions for exposing the inner workings of his management style? As the sun dipped below the horizon, shadows stretched across her room, a reminder of her fears. But beneath the fear lay a burgeoning strength, an insatiable desire to break free from the past. She pushed through the uncertainty, the relentless questioning. This wasn't merely for herself anymore. It was for others who might find solace in her story. Whether her words drew criticism or praise, she had made the conscious choice to rise. Tired but exhilarated, Sarah leaned back in her chair, surveying the screen filled with her thoughts. Perhaps she'd find the answer to her own questions as she wrote. This journey had become bigger than her initial confrontation with Jared. Suddenly, a knock at the door startled her. Who could it be? A wave of apprehension washed over her. Was it too soon for visitors? The moment felt pregnant with tension. As she got up to answer, Sarah felt the weight of her choices pressing down. What awaited her on the other side of the door could change everything once again. Sarah paused, the knock reverberating through her. Her heart raced as she approached the door, a mix of curiosity and dread clawing at her throat. Who could it be? The anticipation spun her thoughts into a chaotic whirlpool. Moments from her confrontation with Jared flooded back, steeped in adrenaline. Would it be him? Could he have come to settle a score? With a deep breath, she gripped the doorknob and turned. As she opened the door, relief swept over her as she recognized the familiar face of Amelia, a former coworker from the diner. Amelia's vibrant energy was a stark contrast to the anxious weight Sarah felt in her chest. "Sarah, I'm so glad I found you," Amelia exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with excitement that momentarily took Sarah's mind off her earlier worries.
"What's up?" Sarah said, letting Amelia step into the room. Curiosity replaced her initial apprehension. She hadn't anticipated a visit, let alone from someone who had witnessed her struggles firsthand. Amelia bounced on her heels. "I just heard you were starting a blog. That's incredible," she beamed. Her enthusiasm felt like sunlight breaking through the clouds, and for a moment, Sarah felt lighter. "You always had such a way with words." "Really? You think so?" Sarah replied, caught off guard by the compliment. It was a validation she hadn't dared to seek yet. "Absolutely. Remember all those stories you tell during our breaks? Those tales kept us going. You have a gift, and now you're turning it into something meaningful," Amelia said, her gaze sincere. The affirmation ignited something within Sarah. "I'm really trying to share my experiences and create a safe space for others," she confessed, suddenly feeling vulnerable. "But I'm scared, too. I don't know if anyone will resonate with my story." "You're not giving yourself enough credit," Amelia asserted, crossing her arms confidently. "What about that time you calmed that rowdy customer down with just a few words? You have talent, and you need to embrace that." With her friend's encouragement, a newfound determination began to blossom within Sarah. She shared her vision for the blog and the fear of Jared's reaction somewhat reluctantly, still grappling with how real her risk felt. "What if he retaliates? What if he tries to ruin my life for speaking up?" Amelia's expression turned serious. "You're right to be cautious, but this is your story. You have the right to tell it. And if he tries to intimidate you, you won't be alone. I'll stand by you. You're part of a bigger narrative, and that holds power." As their conversation deepened, ideas flowed freely between them, igniting a passionate exchange. The creative spark Samara had felt earlier surged again, not just for the blog, but as a potential collaboration with Amelia. They mapped out concepts, weaving Sarah's autobiographical insights with Amelia's flair for storytelling. Each suggestion from Amelia fueled Sarah's fire, unearthing ideas she hadn't considered. Perhaps their combined voices could reach further than she had ever dreamed, intertwining personal histories into a shared narrative tapestry. As the evening passed, the shadows in the room morphed into fleeting shapes, but the atmosphere buzzed with enthusiasm. The doubts that had tangentially loomed earlier began to recede into the background. But as they wrapped up their discussion, a new thought invaded her mind. What if Jared learned of her plans before the blog launched? What if he sought ways to sabotage her once more? The tension licked at her resolve, but she steeled herself. Her past battles prepared her for this, and she could face him again if necessary. "Amelia," she said, a newfound clarity in her voice, "let's take this further than just a blog.
Let's put together a pitch for a book, something that transcends my experiences, something that challenges those in power to reflect." Amelia's eyes widened. Now that's a plan. This could change everything for both of us. With a surge of energy at the possibility, Sarah felt her heart race anew, but the apprehension lingered. This was a new path filled with potential threats and self-doubt. Could she truly face her past while forging ahead into this unknown future? That lingering apprehension swirled in her mind as she watched Amelia's enthusiasm. The decision to craft their stories together could redefine everything, but fear of confrontation with Jared lay in wait. And just like that, she knew the next step would be as vital as the newfound courage pulsating through her. Would she truly commit to fighting for her story? The door to her future had opened, but the hardest battles were yet to come, leaving Sarah wondering just how much she would have to sacrifice to claim her truth. The next morning, the sun cast a golden hue across Sarah's small apartment, bathing the cluttered desk where she had haphazardly jotted down ideas for her blog and potential book. The prospect of collaboration with Amelia ignited a sense of purpose that pushed her anxiety aside, if only for the moment. She sat down, a steaming mug of coffee in hand, and reread the notes they had made. Each scribbled idea felt like a stepping stone, leading her closer to a stronger voice, one she had long been silenced from using. As she rewrote an introduction for a piece about her experiences, it was as if the words flowed from her with the ease of remembering old songs. She found herself describing moments that shaped her, the joy of serving regular customers and the struggle against the storm of her past. However, that excitement was tempered by nagging doubt. What if Jared's anger flared up again? Every keystroke brought back memories of their last encounter, where his words sliced through her confidence like a knife. But she realized now that each story she told might not only liberate her, but could also serve as a cautionary tale for others caught in a similar web. As noon approached, inspiration gave way to discomfort. It was time to confront a deeper issue, her own self-worth. She had placed herself in his shadow for too long, allowing memories of his contempt to dictate the narrative of her life. How had she regarded herself in those moments? Did she truly believe she was less deserving of respect? The thought was suffocating. This evolution as a writer wasn't just a simple leap into sharing her story. It was an excavation of her very essence. With each passing hour, though, something inside her shifted. She shook off the fear of Jared's potential aggression and began to embrace the possibility of empowerment through her words. The stories collected in her mind had been her armor all along, just waiting for her to don them.
She crafted passages about resilience, the beauty of kindness in unexpected places, and the necessity of confronting one's past to build a brighter future. Sarah decided to call Amelia. "Let's not just put together a pitch for a book," she said, her voice steady. "Let's plan a series of discussions, maybe even pull in others who faced similar struggles. We could create something bigger than ourselves." "I love that idea," Amelia replied, excitement radiating through the phone. "When do we start?" Before Sarah could answer, there was a knock on her door, a firm, determined rap that froze her breath. Dread came flooding back, washing over her as she momentarily lost her train of thought. She glanced at her phone. It was still early. Could it really be Jared? Her pulse quickened. This was the moment she had dreaded and anticipated in equal measure. She thought about the words she had penned, the strength she had begun to cultivate, and how they were about to be tested. It would be too easy to let fear paralyze her. They said that confrontation was key, a truth spoken of in both professional guides and self-help books, but she had never fully lived it. Gathering herself, she approached the door and paused, heart thundering in her chest. Behind that door could lie validation or conflict, perhaps both. She held on to the draft of her ideas like a talisman, a reminder of her burgeoning self-worth as she turned the doorknob. What awaited her on the other side could be the defining moment of her journey, an unexpected twist that might either reinforce her resolve or send her spiraling back into the shadows she was working so hard to escape. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door, ready to confront whatever lay beyond. Would it be Jared, seeking more control over her narrative, or something else entirely? As the door swung wide, Sarah braced herself for the confrontation that could either tether her to the past or finally set her free. The door creaked open, revealing not Jared, but an unexpected face, Lisa, her former co-worker from the diner, standing there with eyes wide with concern. "Sarah, I didn't expect you to be home. Can I come in?" Relief washed over Sarah momentarily, but the weight of the confrontation she anticipated still clung to her. She stepped aside, allowing Lisa to enter. As Lisa crossed the threshold, the urgency in her expression told Sarah that this conversation was critical, yet completely uncharted territory. "I saw Jared at the diner earlier," Lisa began, her voice steady but soft. "He was—" She hesitated, searching for the right words. "He was talking about you, saying things that made me worried. I felt I needed to check on you." The spike of anxiety made Sarah's heart race. "What did he say?" The question slipped out before she could rein it back in. She clenched her fists, not wanting to reflect on Jared's influence any longer.
"Just that you were a mess without him, and that you'd probably regret leaving," Lisa replied cautiously. "But I know you, Sarah. You're stronger than you think. I've seen you handle really tough situations." Hearing Lisa's words sparked a flicker of the confidence Sarah had begun to nurture. "I'm trying to channel that strength into my writing," she admitted, her voice gaining a hint of resolve. "Amelia and I are planning something meaningful, conversations about our experiences. We want to create a community of stories, share our truths." Lisa's eyes lit up. "That's amazing. You've always had a way with words. Remember when you tell me about your customers? The way you turn their lives into something real? You must harness that." Sarah felt a warmth spread within her. "It's just," she hesitated, fear creeping back in. "What if I still fail? What if I can't break free from this cycle?" "You won't," Lisa said emphatically, stepping closer. "You've got so many stories to tell, and it's time for your voice to be heard. And whatever Jared says, remember that he doesn't define your worth." Her friend's unwavering support was like a lighthouse guiding Sarah out of the fog. In that moment of clarity, it hit Sarah. Not only was she reclaiming her voice through writing, she was also rediscovering her identity, someone deserving of respect, not just from others, but from herself. "But how do I keep that fire burning?" Sarah asked, feeling the weight of her vulnerability.
What if I come up against pushback from him or anyone else? Then you let it fuel your passion, Lisa replied, her eyes having a fierce determination. Use those moments to fuel your writing. Every conflict, every struggle, it all adds to your narrative. The exchange transformed into a surge of energy. Sarah felt the magnitude of this conversation. This wasn't just about confronting Jared. It was about standing tall within her truth. She realized she needed to channel her fears and her doubts into her writing, to elevate her presence beyond the space she had inhabited for so long. "Thank you for coming, Lisa. I really needed this," Sarah said, her pulse slowing as certainty replaced apprehension. "Let me know how I can support you," Lisa offered, her smile radiating encouragement. As they sat together, discussing ideas for the discussions with Amelia, Sarah's heart wasn't just lighter, it was ignited. She couldn't shake the feeling that things were poised for a significant change. She needed a plan, a way to balance her blossoming self with the lurking shadows of her past. The knot of resistance still stirred inside her. What Jared had threatened loomed larger than she liked to admit. Maybe it's time for another approach, something proactive. I won't be surprised if he tries to come by again, Sarah mused, tapping into the strength of her own resolve. Lisa watched her, admiration in her gaze. "Confront him on your terms, Sarah. Take back your narrative."
As the discussion shifted toward practical steps, Sarah couldn't shake the question that crept in. What if her battle wasn't just with Jared, but with her own fears? Each avenue she explored unveiled a beckoning mystery about her future. Tonight, she would write again, delve deeper into her thoughts, mapping out the confrontation that was inevitable while plotting her roadmap to empowerment. As she thought of the words waiting for her, an idea glimmered in the back of her mind. Not just the confrontation with Jared, but also a way to showcase the light that had been born from this struggle. But as Sarah sat before her blank page, the mere prospect of facing Jared haunted her thoughts, reminding her that some battles cut deeper than words. Sarah stood at the threshold of her journey, the chaos of the past, the weight of decisions made, and those yet to come circled around her. She had reached an inflection point, a moment poised delicately between risk and reward. The notebook in her hands felt like a talisman of identity, filled with stories waiting to leap into the world. After all this time of hesitating, today was the day she would take definitive action. She had discussed her vision for community discussions with Amelia and Lisa, and the excitement they had shared ignited a fire within her heart. It wasn't just about the blog anymore. This was about forging a new path and reclaiming her voice, a voice that had been suppressed for far too long. The stories, the truths, the persistence of her journey, all could transform lives. With the knowledge that accountability and change were contingent upon connection, Sarah decided it was time to send out invitations, casual, brave declarations, to others in the industry who had endured similar struggles. She typed furiously, reaching out to fellow workers, encouraging them to share their narratives in a safe space, a platform for those who felt disempowered by toxic management. A week later, the room echoed with buzz. People filtered in, each bearing stories chiseled from experiences against uncompassionate authority. They came to unburden aching hearts and shed light on hidden injustices that lay cloaked beneath the surface of the diner's familiarity. As every voice joined the conversation, clarity dawned. Sarah realized that not only was she facilitating an exchange of tales, but she was also demonstrating the competence she never knew she possessed. The fear began to dissolve. The very fears Jared had instilled within her melted away with each story shared, each bond formed. And then came the moment that solidified her transformation. One attendee, a young server who had been deeply affected by Jared's wrath, approached her with tear-streaked cheeks. "You've inspired me to speak my truth. Sharing my story today allowed me to reclaim something I thought I lost." The room erupted in support. A tangible wave of recognition enveloped Sarah. Her heart swelled with pride as she realized she had become a fierce advocate. She was harnessing the very changes she sought. This was not merely catharsis, it was empowerment built through parallel journeys. But in the back of her mind lingered the specter of Jared. Would he retaliate? Would the walls she had so meticulously constructed crumble under pressure? As the evening drew to a close, Sarah knew she could no longer let the past hold her captive. Harnessing her courage, she penned a letter to Jared once again, not from a place of anger or fear, but from one driven by clarity. "Dear Jared, I'm writing to inform you that I am reclaiming my narrative. My experiences, woven with the stories of those I have gathered,
will set a new course towards advocating for integrity in our industry. It felt liberating to assert her strength, not only for herself, but for all those silenced by fear. Delivering the letter was an act propelled by resolve, watching Jared's reaction, knowing she was confronting him without the trembling chains of anxiety that had once shackled her. In that confrontation, she discovered she had achieved something more significant. She built a community that resonated with authenticity. Her confidence soared as validation filled every space she had occupied. Fellow servers rallied around her, and even amidst hardship, she recognized the solid foundation of unwavering support. Weeks turned into months of advocacy. Sarah's once scattered aspirations coalesced into a powerful narrative of fortitude. With Amelia, she prepared a proposal for their book, weaving their experiences together into a compelling narrative of resilience. And as they sat in the familiar cafe reflecting on their progress, laughter infused the air, a stark contrast to the anxiety that had previously bound Sarah in knots. She looked over at Amelia, unyielding light in her eyes, and couldn't help but feel a rush of gratitude waft through her heart. "Can you believe how far we've come?" Sarah said, disbelief mingling with joy. "The stories we've shared, the community we've built, even the upcoming panel discussion we planned for the diner's reopening." Amelia grinned, light flooding her expression. "This is just the beginning. You've proved that kindness can change the course of our lives." That was it, the ultimate personal achievement. Sarah was not just a waitress returning wallets. She was a beacon of change, a woman who had seized the narratives of struggle and molded them into triumph. Sarah glanced at the horizon, the possibilities stretching infinitely before her. She felt it, the solid confidence, the undeniable recognition of her competence, the established position as a leader on this newfound path. There was no turning back now. She finished her coffee with a smile, her heart full of determination, as she and Amelia raised their mugs in a toast to the future, unafraid and unapologetically authentic.
You need to subscribe now to witness the unfolding of extraordinary emotional journeys. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and uplift these impactful stories. Comment below your thoughts and reactions about Sarah's transformative journey. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Together, we can inspire change through our stories.